Fat Boys, we finally got the week I've been crying about. Kind of went back to the way things used to be. Running backs were kind of meh. Quarterbacks went off, which means receivers and tight ends actually caught things and scored things. So you might notice a lot of us were well over our Yahoo predicteds. Only a few of us were under, and they will come up a little bit later on. But you're going to hear me say it a bunch. A lot of people had enough to win in most weeks, and obviously only 5 could do so. So who wins? How does that affect us? We'll get to that. First, just a few observations from week 5 in the NFL. Green definitely meant go this week, which was great if you were looking at your Yahoo predicteds. In fact, in most leagues and in most scorings, we can say well over half, if not all but a couple, were in the green as opposed to the less than coveted red, which means I can stop complaining for at least a couple weeks, or at least till the end of this week, about scores and quarterbacks and all the world being lost. We did have some breakout performances, which we've been having in the last couple weeks. We had our Cousins and our Cincinnati Kids and Burrow and Chase. But unlike in other weeks when we had our Kamara performances that pretty much won someone the week, sure, if you had any of those guys I just mentioned, you probably won your week. But actually, if you looked at it, there was enough depth this week that a person could actually have put together a roster that took you down, even if you had one of those few people. So what really got people this week was, did you have one of the people that fell flat on their face? Now, you can't play someone like Jones because he got hurt, and injuries are always one thing. You can't really blame someone like Breece Hall because he's been doing it all year. You could probably throw the same for HN, even though I know that's throwing shade on myself in most leagues. But people like Mason, the quarterbacking combo of Dalton and Darnold, Olave, even Marvin Harrison Jr. have had pretty great and fairly consistent weeks, and they just kind of stunk it up. So if you played someone who started someone and they were the underperformance angle, maybe then you're kind of happy. This is actually pretty similar to the NFL themselves, where there was a lot of very winning efforts, as there always is. But actually, there was almost as many teams that didn't want to win. You look at the Bills, or pretty much anyone in the AFC East right now, and they're probably underperforming. But the Bills especially, tough to make fun. In fact, I kind of can't. Josh Allen, you notice I didn't put him on the underperformance because he kind of did get hurt but just stayed in. I mean, he actually got knocked out if you watched it, and then went into that blue tent of Narnia and came back and was suddenly okay. But was he really okay if when they were on the goal line for, defending goal line, so they just had to get the ball out, waste as many timeouts or clock, depending on what Houston's strategy was. So when they punted it away, at least Houston had a limited amount of time. Instead, they threw 3 very uninspired passing plays that didn't make a lot of sense, did not run the ball at all, obviously didn't want to with Allen, and didn't with their actual running game. Gave Houston tons of time and then lost the game because Houston clearly was just going to kick a field goal. Luckily, though, for Baltimore, they tried to lose the game, but they are not as good at losing as apparently Cincinnati is. As they fumbled the ball, Lamar just coughed it up by not looking and tried to catch it with his chest. That's why you have hands, I think. At least that's what I've been told. But Cincinnati, instead of trying to do anything, and again, they had 2 premier players that were on fire the entire game, they conservatively ran it up the gut for no particular reason, thought their kicker could kick a long field goal, which had been happening, so I suppose that's all right. But the punter drops the snap, and you saw it. Kick didn't quite work out for them. So, I mean, realistically, I think there is that kind of have not right now, which is about normal for week 5. Oddly enough, though, we have no more teams that have not got at least 1 win, but we have 7 teams, I believe, with 1 win, 2 that are undefeated, 1's on a bye, so they're definitely going to keep going. And realistically, if you actually kind of think, some of these green scores actually came from our defenses. Look at 6 or 7 that punched one in the end zone, and some of them on odd plays. So maybe week 5 was just one of those weeks. Biapaloozas typically do that. So maybe I'll stop talking, A, because it's late, B, because you probably stopped listening a bit ago anyway, and we'll get to our actual scores before I talk about our Biapalooza Part 2 that is going to be Week 6. But again, let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's recap Week 5 first. I'll probably say it later on when we look at the standings because I say it literally every single week, but all points matter. So a 140 and a win, pretty huge for you this week, Waylon. And actually even more crazy is if you look at your roster, you didn't have a lot of top 5 performances. Your kicker was the kicker 4. And that's kind of it. But when your 3 wide receivers combined for 65 plus, and you didn't really have too many stinkers. Obviously, Kamara was a bit of an underperformance and not really having much of a tight end, but if that's what we're picking on, you're doing fine. You're also one of the many people who started a defense that actually had a touchdown, and kind of in a double commando here. 9 of 1 of you had a furnished basement. Caleb Williams, though, might have helped you out, Crunchy Hippies, except for the fact that you actually already had a top 5 QB and Caleb was 6th. So kind of sucks because that's your boy, because everyone else in the team really didn't step up for you. Now, Chicago did have a 5th overall defense as well, so I guess your hometown guys were there. But I mentioned some of your running backs in the wrap-up here, with HN being a season disappointment so far, and Mason just having his bad week. It did counteract the fact that Andrews remembered he could catch. But that was about it. You kind of had an underperformance in a week where everyone went off, and Waylon, you definitely went off, so congrats on the top 4. B, you're only a couple points behind the top spot, 138, nothing to sneeze at. And you actually had several people on the board. You had a tight end 3 in Kittle. You had the kicker 1, and you knew that on the Thursday night. You did have the running back 3, but if you can't see him, it's because he was on your bench. Now, Washington's defense scoring you 20 did a great job. Weirdly enough, though, it was the defense for 19 points. Usually will do it for you, but this particular week, not so much. V, you had a tough one because you did have your performances. 123 in most weeks is going to be enough to squeak you by. Bowers was a tight end 2. You had Higgins cracking the top 5. You had just some generally good performances, say in Williams, but you can't get over it. Breece Hall is just the thing that's been pulling you down for the majority. I'm not going to say I blame him for all of your losses, but he certainly is responsible for some of them. You did have a bye week, and you're going to come back next week, hopefully a little bit stronger, but you really got to hope that this firing of the coach wakes up Hall, because he was your boy. And B, top 3. And I said it, we have a lot of high scores, 137. Some weeks that is the top spot. Now you're the 3rd highest overall. But Horst, I'm sure you'll take it. That was a good win for you. I know you need to get back on the positive side of the scoring board because you've had some ups and you've had some downs. Now, in terms of some ups for you this week, Kraft was the tight end 1 and had a monster performance. Drake London, and you knew on the Thursday night. In most weeks, this is going to be our wide receiver 1, but there is a gentleman coming up, we obviously know, that had a monster of a week. And then in general, you just kind of balanced it out. In a week where you weren't sure what Tracy was going to be up to, I think 14 points is a great waiver wire pickup. Seattle, one of the many defenses who scored a touchdown. So overall, you put up a tough fight. Justin, you also are in that 125 is going to win you most weeks, and you know it. Lamar was a quarterback 3. You've got just generally good performances by your running backs. I mean, especially since they're not necessarily your premier running backs. Your kicker was the kicker 5. Unfortunately, your defense did not score a touchdown, and I think we can see in the bench here between injuries and bye weeks, you were kind of dealing with some reserve forces on the way in. So 125 is great to scoop the troops together. You've had such a positive season that really only dips you down to 2nd, so that's not a big deal. Doesn't even really technically dip you down. I just mean you dropped a game there, which, as we're going to find in a second, the person in first did not. But 125 is still going to help with your point totals and all that mess. And then Kevin, this is a well-needed win to put you up to 2 and 3. Yet another tight matchup with 2 people who could claim they should win most weeks. Mark, probably a little bigger for you because it does cement you as the top spot. And let's be honest, you had an okay week all around, but you had Chase. And like I mentioned, he did help you win most. I think, put up a pretty good fight. By the way, just in case you need me here to say the words, or you need to hear me say the words, Chase was our wide receiver 1. Yes, no one else really cracked your top 5. For me, I did have the 3rd highest scoring defense and one of the touchdown hungry defenses. I had the running back 2 as a waiver wire pickup in Hunt. My other running backs did what they were supposed to and a little bit more. Now, Nico Collins did get hurt, and Tyreek Hill still kind of sucks. But overall, and I mean, if you look down, I also could have started Jaden Daniels, but that wasn't going to help me. I still have some injury issues, as does my opponent. But when it came down to it, Chase's 40 was just a bit too much of a mountain to climb. Tried my best, and like I said, 128. Normally, I'm walking with the win. Unfortunately, in this spot, at least I scored some points because a bunch of us are tied. So technically, I am still in the playoffs. So there's a silver lining. Mark, though, still top of the hill, buddy. In the tundra that is Lamborough, it looks like only one of the two can go off in any given week. And this week, it was definitely Burrow's turn. In any other week, in any other city, in any other gin bar, Burrow's the number one quarterback. But we know there's a gentleman who threw for 500 this week, so he is our quarterback too. If you're looking at the rest of the roster here for Lamborough, I mean, 120, nothing to sneeze at, and it's a great performance. I did just cover a couple people who lost who would have took it down, but who cares, Ben? You got the win. You did have Ayuk on the bench, and it's kind of nice for Ayuk to wake up a little bit. He hasn't been super consistent, so I don't blame you not for starting him, but he would have been a help for you. Didn't need him, though. Jake, if you look at the roster he was starting, it's very clear. If we look down on the bench, he was dealing with some very bye and injury related. He was playing commando this week, had nothing in the basement. Minnesota certainly helped him out, one of the many defenses that got in the end zone. Overall, they were our defense number one, which really did give him a fighting cause. But if you look at just kind of the stretch here, he needed one of these guys. He needed Waddle or Kincaid to have a game, or one of his pickups in Gibson and Madison to do something, and they did not. But if you got by your bye week, you're still 3-2. You're still in the playoffs. Things could be worse. Ben, this is a great start. I think you needed the win, and honestly, now you're tied for 6th place with half the rest of the league. So as long as you kind of keep on the positive, you're still getting a fighting chance. I've said it before, and I'll say it again, and then I'll say it again, and then I'll probably say it again. Pay attention to your points scored, because obviously they matter. I technically, if it ended today, I would crack the playoffs by 2 points, and Horst would have broken something. But as we know, we're not even close to being done. We're just in our first third, and we got a whole bunch more to go. But all of these weeks are going to add up, and they're certainly going to help out. But if even you look at the plus and minus here, we're all pretty tight, except for it looks like the Flutie Flakes are kind of taking off on us. So who is the next in line to potentially take him down? If we look at week 6, looks like we got a pretty solid matchup, crew. We got our number 1 and our number 2, Justin Mark. Let's see how you square off. If you even look at other matchups, I mean, a 5-6 with Jake and I, of course, did not get him on the bye week. Would have been cooler if I did. We also have some 8-9 matchups, which I know that sounds like I'm making fun. I'm certainly not, because that definitely means one of the many 2-win teams are going to be 3 wins, and that is possibly enough to pop them up. We'll see how things go. The rest, obviously, they're all going to matter, and I'm not really going to go ahead and break them down. I noticed some people have made their waiver wire moves and some have not. Some are waiting, and this is a Buy-A-Palooza week, so do pay attention. We got a lot of teams that are going to make a lot of impact. Every week seems to bring with it a new theme, so if you can pick this one, is the running backs this week? Are the tight ends going to have a monster? I doubt all the defenses are going to score that much again, but hey, what do I know? Maybe it'll be another kicker week. I like the quarterback weeks, though, because it's fun to score a lot of points, although it is a little bit upsetting how many times during the recap I had to say, you lost, but you had enough to win most weeks. Maybe it only hurts because I was one of those. Anywho, now we're getting ready for week 6. We'll see what the trends bring us. It is another funky London week, which I actually don't mind. I get to watch games a little bit earlier in my day, which is kind of nice. I believe this is 2 of 3, and then later on, a few weeks later, we'll get back to Munich. It's also a big Buy-A-Palooza week. You've already noticed with the waiver wire, if you're paying attention, some people hit it just because we have a short bench, a lot of injuries, and teams like Kansas City, the Rams. The other two, it's funny, it kind of flips. The Dolphins, you would have thought were the one that we would have all been ready for and actually more concerned of, but maybe getting the Dolphins out of our lineup isn't the worst thing in the world. But the Vikings being on bye actually randomly impacts a lot of us. Either way, super excited about it. We get to watch a little bit more on this end. We have a national holiday on Monday, so that'll be pretty fun. And it is Happy Canadian Thanksgiving for all those who celebrate. So enjoy the weekend.